Okay, the first problem was Wanda and Miles. And so what do we know? We know that we have curly hair and we have straight hair. These are the two alleles. So if you have curly hair, you have to be this. If you have wavy hair, you're in the middle. And if you have straight hair, you have to be this, because incomplete dominance. And so we see that Wanda comes from a long line of curly-haired people, right? So Wanda she is curly-haired. And then we have Miles that we don't know his hair, but we know that his mother has wavy hair, okay? So this is Miles. We don't know what he is, but we know his mom had wavy hair, so she has to be this. And his dad had curly hair, so he has to be that. So given what we know, what could Miles be? Okay, so then mom would make eggs that are C or S, and dad would make sperm, ugly sperm, that are CC. So he has a 50% chance that he's got the curly haired allele, all right? But the other 50% he could be wavy. So not knowing his genotype, what's the overall chances of Wanda and Miles having kids with curly hair? So we know what Wanda is. Wanda is big C, big C. But in order to have curly hair, we don't know what Miles is, and so you have to do out both squares. So here's Wanda always. Wanda always makes big C eggs. But Miles, he could either be big C, or he could be CS. So all of these, 4 out of 4 will be curly. But of these, only 2 of the 4 will be curly. So out of the 8 possible, it's 6. Okay, next is Jacques and Sabrina. So Sabrina had a mom. So if we draw Sabrina, let's see here. We've got Sabrina. Her mother died of Huntington's disease. So we know she has at least one big A because it's a dominant disease and she died of it. But we know that it says here that, Antoinette died of Huntington's disease, as did Sabrina's maternal grandfather. But we know that her maternal grandmother did not have the disease. So her mom was disease-free. So we know that Sabrina's mom is big A, little a. We also know that Sabrina's father does not have the disease. So Sabrina's dad is little a, right? So then we have to decide what's the probability that Sabrina will inherit Huntington's disease, and we know nothing about her. And so if you do the Punnett square here, here's the eggs that her mom makes and the sperm that her dad makes. So she has a 50% chance of getting the Huntington's allele. And then we want to know what's the probability that Sabrina and Jacques' child will get it if Jacques is homozygous recessive. So Jacques is this. So there's 2 ways to do this. You can do out both squares of Sabrina being either big A, little a, or so we know that Sabrina is either big A, little a, or little a, little a. And you could do out both squares and count out of 8. Or you can say the only way for them to have a child with Huntington's is if Sabrina is that. So there's a half probability that she's that. And then for her to pass it on, it's a 50-50 chance, right? So there's a half probability that she passes it. And so overall, there's a 1/4 probability that one of the children will have it. Okay, and then it says, what if Jacques is heterozygous? So again, Sabrina is either this or this, so you could do out both. And in this case, I might recommend doing out both, only because it gets a little confusing with the probabilities. So if you do out both, there's Jacques, here's Sabrina, and then again, here's Jacques and Sabrina being little a. So out of the 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them have it. The other way you can do it is to say there's a half probability she's that, and if she is, 3/4 of them will have it. So that's 3/8, and if she's this half probability, then half of them have it, which is 1/4 or 2/8, and 3/8 plus 2/8 is 5/8. Either way, you get 5/8. Okay, now we have Mindy and Joseph. So this is the one that I totally messed up in my efforts to simplify it for you. I oversimplified the probability. And I've done this before. I just need to write this down. Anyway, so we're talking about cystic fibrosis. So let's draw this all out. We have Mindy and Joseph. So I'm going to call Mindy, M-I, and Joseph, and let's figure out what we know about them. So Mindy discovers that her mother had a sister. So we're going to look up at her mom. Her mom had a sister that was little a, little a. So that means that both parents, and actually I think I need to move this all down, that means that both of the mom's parents were carriers because her sister had it. So then we have to decide what are the chances that her mom was a carrier. So that's what this first one is asking, that her mother was a carrier of the disease. And so this is where if she didn't die of the disease, then she's got two options, big A, or big A, little a. But I failed to remember that the big A, little a has double the probability. So remember from Hardy-Weinberg, heterozygotes have double the probability. So if we were actually to do the square out for these parents, there's possibility, there's a possibility, there's a possibility, but this is not a possibility. And so really you do remove it from the probability, and so 2 of the 3 options are carriers. So there's a 2/3 chance that the mom is a carrier. Okay, and so then it asks, what are the odds that Mindy is a carrier? And we know that Mindy's dad, he's not a carrier at all, he's homozygous. So he's big A, okay? And she's 2/3 chance big A, little a, 1/3 chance big A. So you can do all the squares out if you'd like, or you can do probability. I'm going to start with doing all the squares out. Here are the 3 possibilities for Mindy. She could be big A, she could be big A, little a, or again, that's double probability. She could be big A, little a. So you could actually do it in a big square like this with the dad, we know, as being big A. So all he can make is big A. So if we look at all of these possibilities, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, 2 of the 6 are carriers, or 1/3. The other way to do it is to say the only way that Mindy could be a carrier is if her mother was, and there's a 2/3 chance that mom was this, and then if she was that, then it's a 1/2 probability that she'll pass it. And so that also gives you 2/6 or 1/3. Okay. So then carrying that forward, we then want to know, so Joseph had a brother with CF. So what's the odds that Joseph is a carrier? This is the same math we did up here. And so we know that his chances of being a carrier are 2/3 as well. And so then the last thing is, knowing neither Mindy or Joseph, what if they decide to have children? So we already know that Mindy's probability, we solved it, Mindy's probability is 1/3 chance that she's this. And Joseph's probability is a 2/3 chance that he's this. And if 2 carriers get together, if we do the little box out like we did up here, only 1/4 of them will have the disease. They'll be little a. And so you really have to just say 1/3 times 2/3 probability times 1/4 probability, and that gives you 2 out of 36, or 1 out of 18. Okay, now you could also do out all the squares. You could do, 1/3 possibility that she's that, and the other 2/3 is the other one, the big A, and same thing here. You could do them all out, but at this point, I think it's easier to do probability. So again, I apologize. I was trying to simplify it and just say she could be one or the other, but technically heterozygotes have double the probability. So that's that one. Okay, and last but not least, we have Gunnar and Einer, 2 brothers from Iceland. Okay, and so we have this injury, Gunnar gets bored by a, is that what it's called? Gored by a rhino, and he's lost a bunch of blood. And we know that Gunnar is A negative. So what do we know about Gunnar? Whoa, can I even spell his name? We know that he's got at least an A. We don't know what the other allele is, and then he's negative, so we know he's minus minus. Okay? And so we need to know what kind of blood he can receive. So his immune system recognizes A's, and that's it. He does not recognize B's, and he does not recognize the Rh factor, okay, because he's negative for that. So the only possible things that be sticking off a red blood cell, this is my little red blood cell, are A's, B's, or Rh's, and he only recognizes A's. So he could receive blood that's A as long as it's minus, or he could receive blood that has nothing on it, which would be O minus, okay? So then we don't know anybody's blood type, but we know that Einer, because he's a brother, they know that they're parents, so Einer decides to give his blood. We know that the parents of Gunnar and Einer, their parents are O negative and A positive. And so we were trying to figure out what Einer is. So we know the O negative genotype, right? And do we know the O positive genotype? Well, we do, because there was a sister born that was O negative. So we know that he has to be, or whatever parent that is, has to be carrying an I, and they have to be carrying a minus. Okay, so again, this is great, except that we don't know for sure. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to say, if this is eggs, what kind of eggs can that person produce? Well, they can only produce little i's minuses. And as far as sperm goes, well, we can do an A with the positive. We can do an A with the negative. We can do an I with the positive, or we can do an I with the negative. And so if these two get together, that's going to be A positive blood, right? If these two get together, that'll be A negative blood. If these two get together, that'll be O positive blood. And the last two get together, that'll be O negative blood. So if he can only receive this one and this one, we're shooting at 50-50%, 50-50 chance that he's going to live.